Welcome to the TA6 Consultation Update as part of National Conveyancing Week. This session is hosted by Rob Hailstone, a co-chair of the Conveyancing Foundation and founder of Bold Legal Group. He is joined by Mark Evans, Vice President at the Law Society.
Very pleased for you to join us today, Mark. Do you just want to do a quick intro as to you and your experience, etc., please?
Yeah, hi everybody. My name is Mark Evans. I'm the Vice President of the Law Society of England and Wales. And just to put things into perspective with my history, so I started in 1993 and for 29 years I've been in the High Street as a conveyancer. And then in 2022 or 2021-22, I now teach real estate and property work at the University of Law. But for 29 years, obviously, I was a practitioner. And when I started, obviously, back in 93, we were on typewriters and I had a fax machine. And obviously, things have moved on a little bit since then. But that's my sort of conveyancing background, Rob.
That was 19 years after I started, by the way, Mark. We didn't even have typewriters then, I think. Okay, so just for the viewers' sake, they can post questions in the chat, and I think you and I will be able to see them, and I will try and read out as many as possible if I haven't covered them in my own questions. There will be a recording of this session made available hopefully tomorrow morning. So if anybody has to leave early or has missed it, they should get the recording. Now, normally, in a live environment, I would have some housekeeping, but I guess if a fire alarm goes off, don't worry, it's my house on fire, not yours. And you will probably know where your restrooms are, so we'll skip that bit. So seriously now, thank you for agreeing to take part in this webinar. Like others, I've tried to take in the information supplied earlier as much as time would allow. However, some of my questions may have been answered in the releases today, but not everyone watching us today will have had time to glance at them, let alone read them fully yet. So I apologise now for asking any questions that may have been already replied to. Now that comment leads me nicely on to my first question. Why was the update released now? Conveyancers have their backs to the wall trying to meet the SDLT deadline for many of their clients. Some on social media have suggested that the Law Society might be trying to slip these new proposals under the radar. Is that the case, Mark? Okay, well, thanks, Rob. And I think it'd be helpful if I explained and put into context where we are and why the announcement has been made today. And in that regard, obviously, we're aware that obviously last summer we went out to consultation on the TA6, on the 5th edition and the 4th edition. And that consultation obviously then took place over the summer and over the autumn of 2024. And then that was concluded sort of at the latter part of 2024 when all the consultation from over 1,200 people who contributed in various forms from, whether it be partners, whether it be owners, whether it be sort of normal solicitors, paralegals, lots of people. So we had a lot of information that came in from the consultation. Following that, what then happened, obviously, is then we then used the information from that collection, basically, to start to analyse the data and look to see what individually people had been saying. And that obviously takes some time, but it became quite apparent quite early on that there was obviously some fundamental sort of issues for us to be considering as such. And so we came to the conclusion in a working group, and I'll explain who was in the working group a little later, but we having looked at the information and the results of the consultation, we came to the conclusion that the way forward here would be a two-form approach. And so we made a recommendation then to the Conveyancing and Land Law Committee that having looked at the results of the survey and analysed the feedback that we had, that there needed to be a two-form approach. The Conveyancing and Land Law Committee obviously then referred that to the Policy and Regulatory Committee in our sort of governance structure. And that one was sort of in early in 2024. And quite rightly then, the Policy and Regulatory Committee said that
in view of the history and what has happened in the last sort of 12 months, that we should now refer it to the Law Society Board for them to agree as to whether or not our procedure and what we've done is the way forward. So earlier this month, obviously, then it went to the board, and we had scheduled then and it's obviously a long-standing schedule for the 19th of March to be there a council meeting. And so yesterday we had our council meeting where we were able to present all our findings from the consultation and our way forward, basically to council. And it was at the council meeting yesterday that we then made the decision that now we're in a position where we can make public what the consultation has said and our way forward. But I must stress, obviously, it's coincidental that this coincides with National Conveyancing Week. And I do say that originally, I think me and you were going to have a talk on the Monday of this week. And I think I mentioned that maybe we need to wait until after council has had its meeting on Wednesday before we could see what, if anything, needs to be done. And in response to, why are we making the decision today? It's because it's gone through our governance structure now. It's gone through the working group, the Conveyancing and Land Law Committee. It's gone through the Policy and Regulatory Committee. It's gone through the board, and it's now gone through council. And so we made a decision yesterday. And so the question is, do we now delay until the 1st of April? And say that's
not a good date.
Yeah, and say or after. Do we then say now this is the situation now, or do we actually go live now and say immediately now we've made that decision? Here are the results. This is what we're doing. And so I'm comfortable with the fact that we've now made public what has been revealed by the consultation, and more importantly, what we're planning to do in the future. And to those conveyancers who have been concerned or worried online about, unlike stamp duty or land transaction tax, we're not changing the forms overnight.
No.
We're not changing the tax law. We're not changing and saying that this is going to happen within the next fortnight or 2 or 3 weeks. We're actually saying, look, here's the results, digest them, look at them. We have a plan now as to the way forward, and we have an implementation timescale now as to what will happen next. So I'm very conscious of conveyancers who are under incredible stress and pressure at this time. And to each and everyone who's online or been watching this, I just have to say thank you. Thank you for the work you're doing day in, day out, and appreciate that this is a stressful time. But I think we would have been criticised for saying nothing. Equally, for possibly we can be criticised for now making this announcement. But it is the right time to do it because we're now at a position where we can move matters forward.
Yeah, and even so, I don't think this would have been swept under the rug, even though conveyancers are very, very, very busy. And as you say, they don't have to do anything right now. They can do something, think about it in more detail in April. So it's out there now. We've got to get on with it, which is good. So you've announced the 2-form approach. So a new TA6, 6th edition, and a material information form, which is a working title, I understand. So why 2 new forms? Is that the feedback you've got? Is that the feedback you're working from? Okay,
so out of the sort of 1,200 sort of people who fed back on our consultation, clearly there is a divergence of opinion within the conveyancing sector, and clearly, the overwhelming response that we had was people liked the 4th edition form. But even under people who said they liked the 4th edition form, they were still critical of it in some of the sections and some of the wording, and said it could be improved. And equally, people were uncomfortable with the 5th edition form, and in particular, the element of material information that was added on that form. So we had, choices, I suppose, to make. Either just simply to revert back to the 4th edition form with no changes, in which case we've not benefited from any of the consultation that we've now had as such, or we continue with the 5th edition material information form. Neither of those options were really the best options to pursue. And having looked at the data and having looked at the responses, individual responses, it became clear to us that, we can get an improved TA6 6th edition form, purely dealing with property matters. Looking at the wording, looking at the sections clause by clause, taking into account people's considerations. But equally, there were a number of conveyancers who said they wanted to be instructed early on in the conveyancing transaction. There are conveyancers out there, whether we agree with them or not, who still want to use and supply material information. And so we came to the conclusion that the way forward then would be to form a CQS point to keep the property information form, the 6th edition, purely on property matters, which will be compulsory, but basically to then have a separate form for material information to allow those conveyancers who are currently using that or want to embrace that to do so. Now, obviously, we're not in a position today to show you these two forms and go into exact detail. And obviously, there is a lot of things going on with government and cases and other things that will influence that. But the key thing for me to get across is that the 6th edition form is predominantly the old 4th edition, but revised and updated, and will be a considerably improved version of that form.
Okay. I'm just reading the questions that are coming in and trying to listen to you and look at my own questions. So excuse me. One question that's been posted. Where's it gone? Sorry. Will you be able to continue to use form TA7 4th edition once the new TA6 6th edition comes out in October 25?
Okay, so basically what I'm going to say on this is, clearly when we're now going through the process of the forms, we've been looking now at the new sort of TA6 6th edition. We're now looking at the material information form. We've clearly got to have an overlap now as to see how that interrelates to other forms that we're using. As such, we also clearly want to understand whether language is consistent. So, all I will want to say today is we're here to talk about the TA6. I don't want to really get into what impact it might have on other forms or other issues, but further details will follow, and everything will be on our website if there is to be any other changes that is required.
Okay, thanks. Why is making the new TA6 form mandatory for CQS members a whole year away? That seems a long time.
Yeah, I think from our perspective, what we're conscious of from the consultation and the responses that we had is clearly at the moment we have a form that is, compulsory, shall we say, for CQS firms, or the old edition form, the 4th edition. For us as well, we can use the 5th edition as well, but they're not compulsory. The year delay in coming in, or what we're saying, is because we're very conscious now that we want to get this right. There was a lot of criticism last year with the way that the new form was implemented and the times that was done. And the feedback that we had from the consultation is that there needs to be sort of user testing of the forms to ensure that it's, easy to understand for the sellers, the conveyancers, and those in the process. So we anticipate, and I think in the information that's been circulated, there's a timescale now as to what we're proposing to do. There isn't going to be any overnight changes. I think when we get to the sort of summer now, and you start to then see the new forms, I think people will be impressed with what they see and the language that is used. And I think we're going to be in a better position. But what we're not going to be doing is taking on board what was said last year, and that we're going to be following through on what we've said, that we're listening to our members, and we're going to be going down the training and education and making sure that things are done in a timely manner and not overnight.
Okay. Again, just looking at questions. There's a large portion of the general public who do not understand the questions in the current TA forms. Will the general public understanding be taken into account when finalising the new forms?
Yes. So basically, I can categorically say that we're actually looking in minutiae detail as to the language that is being used. And that's going to be part of the user testing project that we're going to be putting in place. So what I can assure you all is, when we say that the working group, which does consist of frontline conveyancers, but that working group of 10 or 12 conveyancers is basically using the feedback from 1,200 conveyancers. That's what we're using as our information. And so, we've been working on a week by week basis, meeting weekly to look at sections clause by clause. And so we're wanting to basically simplify it. We've taken on board the concerns about language and layout and structure. And so the only way we're going to see if this is workable is by actually going out to the actual sellers and testing it. So we're going to have this user testing period to see, well, what is working, what isn't working, and is it simple? Because it should be that the form is used and filled in by sellers without recourse to asking solicitors, well, what does this mean? And one of the criticisms we had was people didn't understand the language, they didn't understand what they were being asked to answer, and the options for their answer was limited. So we've been looking to ensure that it's a seller-friendly form as such, but obviously there is going to be legal jargon or legal words that are there, but they've got to be easily explained and understandable for all to use.
And like the TA6 form, are you expecting conveyancers to read the replies in the material information form and sort of check them for their clients? And if so, will that put any extra liability on them?
I mean, there won't be any extra liability with the new forms or what's being proposed as what is already there at this present moment in time. So obviously, on a personal level, if somebody was to send a form in to me, I would check to ensure that the form has been completed and that the sections have all been completed and would revert back to the client. So I think it's for individual solicitors to ensure that the form has been completed as such, but ultimately it is the seller supplying that information as such. And one of the concerns that was raised, in the consultation as well about liability and disclaimers, that's something we're working hard on and looking at as well, to ensure that there's a clear understanding of what you should disclose and what you should say and where liability obviously rests.
So are you getting more advice on that then? Because if I remember correctly, you were saying there wasn't any additional liability.
No, there isn't any additional liability. So for us, but what we're looking at is the language that's being used in the forms. So we're comfortable with where we are, and I think when the new forms come in, as I say, you will see what the disclaimers are and the introductory notes are there. And we are looking quite closely at these explanatory notes and how easy it is to understand and to follow. And we're also looking sequentially at the way that the layout of the form is and how it runs. And it won't surprise people. It will be similar in style, but it won't be identical to the 4th edition. And there are a lot of things, even if you look at the consultation details, that people weren't happy with in the old 4th edition, and some of the questions that were raised there as well.
Okay. Well, there might be more don't knows, etc., and things like that. But yeah. So a hot question is, why is the 5th edition still available for use? And is it really being used at the moment by anyone?
Okay, so on our statistics at the moment, about a third of people who are using it through our licenses now are still using the 5th edition. And that's sort of been steady since the consultation started last year. So there is a number of people using it now. For whatever reason they're using it, whether it's because of their licensed supplier or because it's their favoured form, what we don't think is the position is to withdraw it, because obviously for those who are still wishing to embrace giving or supplying material information, then that still can be used and that form can be done. We didn't think it appropriate at the time to withdraw that form, whilst we're saying that you can still continue to use the 4th and the 5th edition, and that's been running quite sort of smoothly over the last few months, albeit it is an inconvenience that there's two forms. And I fully appreciate appreciate there will be an overlap period now with the implementation of the new forms, but it won't be done, as I say, overnight. And there will be obviously this testing before that is put into place.
But the 5th edition will be removed when the 6th edition comes in.
Yeah, the 5th edition and the 4th edition will both be removed.
Yeah.
Just so we're 100% clear, the TA6 6th edition will be the only form for property related matters on the CQS.
Okay. So will the new material information form be available to use free of charge by others, for example, estate agents?
Yeah, so as we're moving forward, clearly we're looking at having the new material information form available to as many people who want to use it as possible. Because for us, what we're trying to do is look at the bigger sort of conveyancing market here, that anything that can improve the process. And I know there's conflicting views as to how the conveyancing process can be, speeded up, and issues over technology and all these other issues. And that's, a lot of comments and feedback that were made in the consultation. But for us, we've got to look to see what the guidelines are saying. Obviously, they may be changing or otherwise, but we do feel that, there is, even on the consultation, there is certain material information that is important to be disclosed at an early stage as such. And if that can be disclosed, then it should be.
Yeah, and it seems at the moment very few estate agents are adhering to the material information guidance. Is it your hope that when this form comes out, that will help them or encourage them to adhere to it?
Well, certainly what we hope, obviously, is that, we will have a form that we believe will be compliant and obviously user-friendly for the seller and for anyone who wants to use it. What we do envisage, though, unlike maybe we're hoping that with our 6th edition form for the property, that form will be in situ for hopefully quite some time without any change. What we do envisage, though, that this is a changing political landscape. There is a lot of things going on here at the moment. So, I suspect that this will be a form that evolves over time as such, and that's why it will not be compulsory in any shape or form, and it will be a voluntary form for those that want to engage with it.
Somebody's just said you haven't actually answered the question about estate agents. Are they going to be made available to estate agents without licenses? Yeah. Okay, I thought so. What's your view then on the estate agents getting clients to complete the TA6 without reference to a conveyancer? Is that going to be a problem at all? I mean,
we want, obviously, conveyancers to be instructed at the earliest stage in a transaction, ideally. But we are very conscious that, there are arrangements with estate agents and third parties or other things with referral fees or other things that complicate this whole position. For us, our aim is we've got some fantastic conveyancers out there who are doing, fantastic work, who obviously have been acting for clients sort of, on various transactions. A lot of these firms and have all the information that they have, already on that behalf of that client. And we do hope that, and it's not always the case. And I know realistically, you often get told that the house is on the market only when the memorandum of sale hits your desk. And that's your first point of contact in the transaction. And that's why we do have to be aware of what the government are saying or what the guidance is saying or trading standards are saying, because, we need to ensure that if there is information out there, that solicitors are available to be able to give that information, and it has to be accurate as such. And there may well be opportunities there for solicitors to get involved. And I've seen a lot of the issues on social media and otherwise about can we charge or not charge, but ultimately, as I say, it will be for individual firms to decide themselves as to which course of action they want to take under their own business model.
Yeah, and there are firms out there working with estate agents now and being instructed much earlier on, as you say, what the commercials are around that are up to the individuals to decide.
Yeah.
So you say that information and training will be provided by to conveyancers and their clients. Can you explain how that will work? Will it be via webinars, road shows, written help? How do you see that?
Okay, so when looking at the sort of the stages where we're moving forward now, we're looking obviously to get the forms completed now. Obviously, now we have the green light from council yesterday. We've done an awful lot of work, obviously, on this weekly basis. We're now going to speed the process up, basically, to get these forms sort of finished in sort of May, June, to then go out to user testing. And we're going to be using the same company that we had for our consultation to get an independent testing of the forms. And then obviously we're going to be looking at user training and sort of how we get that out. And that could be now through the same format that we've been using in the consultation, whether it be training, sort of podcasts and other things. But some of the things that, is apparent to me that is coming to light, that there clearly needs to be a lot of training sometimes in the conveyancing market. As such, and there are gaps here that is causing problems in the conveyancing chain. And if I can explain what I mean by that, that looking at the bigger picture, there are sort of, and I'm obviously a lecturer now at the University of Law, so I can now see what is on the SQE1 syllabus or the LPC syllabus, and there's very little sort of information on unregistered land and other areas, shall we say, and I naively, because I did the legal the law finals exam before it became the LPC, but there's a lot of issues there about people don't understand that unregistered land needs to be registered and other things. So there's so many issues that have come out from the consultation that we're going to be looking and focusing on what training we can give and how we can help and move matters forward for the profession as a whole.
Yeah, and of course, unregistered land doesn't need to be registered before it's sold, does it?
No.
Which some conveyancers are pushing back on, obviously.
Yeah.
So that's the kind of training you're talking about.
Yeah, we're looking at the bigger picture here. I think we're looking at obviously what needs to be done. Clearly, we've seen in the press and other things recently about technology and the silver bullet, or what or may not happen, and what the government are proposing. But what the government are proposing obviously is not practical from on the ground or at the coalface. And so we've got to be making sure now through consultations and feedback that we're representing the views of what's happening in the high street or in that city. And often we're told after the event. So what we've been able to gather from this consultation is essential, really, for us to be able to use data and evidence to show to those that make decisions, shall we say, what isn't working or what potentially could work.
Yeah, okay. So are both the TA6 and the material information forms being made available without license? I guess there'll still be a license and copyright.
Yeah, there'll still be a license, yeah.
Right. Okay. For the material information form as well?
Yeah, as I say, as far as the material information form, we are still, as I say, at the process of drafting that and seeing which direction of travel we go. But certainly it's going to be under a licensed product for the TA6 6th edition.
Right. Okay. Even for agents?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. This one's just come in. I haven't read it yet. Contractually, lawyers will want sellers' solicitors to confirm MI information, leading to duplication and possibly increasing costs. Lawyers providing MI to agents is the obvious way forward. Is that the likely recommendation? It's the most practical and sensible one, I think.
Yeah, I think obviously, the whole reason that we're still, using or proposing to have this material information form is because obviously that is what is now being sort of requested and put upon the profession. When you're talking about duplication of costs and other things that are there, what we're very conscious of here is we don't want to be duplicating information that is in the material information form in the TA6 6th edition form. We don't want there to be any sort of issues here that there is, that there is a clear difference as to the information that's supplied in one form as opposed to the other. But clearly, the material information form that is going to be disclosed will cover that material information as such. But we also need to ensure, and that's what we've been working hard, is that, a seller isn't going to have to duplicate information necessarily then in the TA6 6th edition form.
Yeah, and I know a number of conveyancers who have approached agents to say, can we help you provide material information? And the agents have just pushed back and said no. Hopefully this form will be an aid for those conveyancers to go to them and say, look, we really can help you now. Get us instructed earlier if you can.
Yeah.
Okay, good. Can we expect to see any updates to the protocol as well in due course?
I mean, obviously, my involvement at the moment is clearly I've been involved in the working group looking at the TA6 as such, and the 5th and the 4th edition and where we move forward. Clearly, we do have to be looking, as I said before, at the feedback from our members in this consultation. You will see, hopefully we've been open and transparent with the reports that have been disclosed. Once you start to look into everything that is there, I think, we have to then look at it as a whole as to the way that matters move forward as such. And obviously, I'm not going to be committal as to, the direction of travel, but clearly, we do have to look at it as a whole.
Yeah, I mean, one person has said, isn't material subjective? What one person doesn't care about, another might. But you are following on from the trading standards guidelines now, aren't you?
Yeah.
You didn't make the decisions as to what would be material or not.
No. We're not deciding what is material information or not. We're following on guidelines. But what we're also looking to do, obviously, is to have that dialogue and discussion with what is or isn't, clear, because we've got feedback and data now to say, well, people just don't understand what they mean by this and how is this going to work in practice. And, we're aware of the fact that this is an evolving position and things are likely to change. But what we can't be naive here is that we have a government that has made its intention clear as to what direction of travel it seems to want to go down. So, we have to be at the table and sort of, taking on board what is there, but also expressing the views and concerns of our members, which we do not just in conveyancing, but many other areas such as legal aid, etc., as well. So, we have to be critical to the government where we're saying, this isn't going to work in practice.
Okay, I know there's a timeline in some of the documentation. What's the next stage then? Will there be further updates, or is the next step, if I remember rightly, the summer, late summer?
Yeah. So just to give you, obviously, we're looking. We've obviously made this announcement today about what the two-form approach will be and how we're moving forward. We're looking obviously in the summer now of this year then of going out to this user testing as such and basically ensuring that the form is easy to use, it's comprehensive, and that basically we've got it right, basically, hopefully. And then in the autumn of this year, then obviously we're then looking now to then start now to go into the launch before of spring of next year, when obviously the forms will then be withdrawn. Now there will, if we can speed the process up, that may or may not be possible, but there is obviously, a lot of things we've got to be going through to get to the next stage. But today, what we simply wanted to be doing is showing to people, and there was this, thing after the, consultation last year. Well, what will we know and what will be disclosed and how are things going to be moving forward? You've got a lot of data and information that's been disclosed today. And I really apologize that at 3:00 today, we've got this when it was only announced this morning. And I hope I've explained to everyone that this isn't done intentionally to be a last minute thing. It was just simply, we felt it was so important to get this information out to our members because it's 6 months really since the consultation ended. And so we've had to go through our procedures to get to where we are today. And that's why, we're here, and I'm more than happy to be speaking to you and sort of answering as many questions as I possibly can. But what I will say is there is an awful lot of information that is going to be on the website. Yeah. There's an awful lot of information that is going to be there and linked, and that will be constantly updated as and when is required, and to keep people informed as to the progress that's being made.
Okay, thanks. Just a couple more questions then before we finish. So broadly speaking, will the new TA6 main form be similar to the 4th edition and then a supplemental form with further information to be provided? But that's the voluntary bit.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, that's an easy answer to that question.
Yes.
Thank you. And then I think
the key thing for me, Rob, is simply to say, think of the 6th edition form as the 4th edition form, but a revised and updated form. And the 5th edition form was the criticism was it was long, it was lengthy, it had material information, it mixed things up. Basically, the material information is being removed from that side of it and being replaced and put into a separate form altogether. And so obviously, that will reduce the length of the TA6 6th edition and also hopefully make it easier for those completing it. And you'll see as well, from the figures that are there, that there's a huge disparity within those using the forms as to whether it's paper copy, whether it's PDF, whether it's, digital or whatever. So, we need to ensure that these forms are applicable for all our users and the public in general.
Okay, so finally, just 2 more questions. And then if I miss any questions, if people want to email me, or I presume you or the Law Society, they can ask those questions and we'll get some feedback on them. But just quickly then, I'm not clear, is there a timeline for the release of the new TA7 form?
No, as I say, as far as the new TA7 form is, at the moment we've not got a timescale yet that we're going to be going along with. We're working, as I say, all the existing forms that can continue to be used. Okay, so I must stress that all the existing forms that are there that conveyancers can use today are still going to be used. So there isn't going to be any, as I say, overnight changes. There isn't going to be anything that is radically going to happen. But obviously, what we're looking at is as the new forms are being developed now and processed, they obviously have to work with the other forms that we're using as well. And so, as I say, this is part of what's going to be happening over the coming months. And if there is any announcements to be made, I can assure you that we're going to be consulting and sort of ensuring that there is this communication process that we will be following.
Okay, thanks. Right, last one from the chat. Will there be a statement in the material information form that specifically excludes liability for solicitors' replies, given this is a non-mandatory form? I support this form and wish it had been considered before trying to introduce a new TA6 form, which very plainly would cause uproar across the profession. So the question is, will there be a statement in the MI form that specifically excludes liability for solicitors?
Yeah, so we're looking, obviously, we're looking at not only what the responses we had before with the 5th edition and 4th edition and liability, and what we're looking at is obviously the wording that we will use in the form now coming forward for material information on the 6th edition. What we are saying is that we're not looking to increase any liability, and there will not be any increase in liability that isn't already there. Clearly, we've made statements, in the past that if somebody is aware of something, obviously, and they don't disclose it and it's within their knowledge. But for us, as I say, I don't want to go into the detail of what the disclaimer will say, but the disclaimer obviously, will be, hopefully, as I say, when that is released in the summer, you will see that everything the concerns people have been raised have been taken on board, but also the comments as well, the other side of that argument as well has been considered. Okay.
Well, look, Mark, thanks for your time today. There's no doubt this issue will continue to run for at least another year, if not longer. You've kindly said you'll join me at our conference in June. Will you be able to provide a further update on the TA6 and this then, do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. Obviously, in our timescale now as to where we are, we should have information as to certainly how close we are now to getting, if not at that stage. And obviously, if there's further information we can disclose to our members, then we're more than happy to do so. But before I finish, Rob, I do genuinely want to say that appreciate anyone who's joining us today in the difficult time, at this time of month. We appreciate the effort that is there. what I want to, on a personal level, having been in conveyancing and we want respect for our conveyancers, both within the profession and outside of the profession. Obviously, we understand that this is a complicated area and there's many dynamics to it, but we also, we have a common goal that we want to make things better for the future. And so hopefully, by the time we get to the summer as well, there'll be a lot more flesh on the bones, shall we say, for us to be discussing as to what we're forward. But we wouldn't be where we are today if it wasn't for the 1,200 people plus who have actually filled in and at their own time and made their own effort in giving their views, and there was a diverse range of views. And for that, we're grateful and thank everyone for their contribution.
Okay, well, conveyancing, in my opinion, certainly has never been tougher than it is now. It doesn't look like it's going to get easier anytime soon. Hopefully, these new reforms may help going forward. So I think let's let the frontline conveyancers now crack on with their day jobs. They can go back to work. Thank you for joining us. See you all on the other side, the 1st of April, and that's no joke. Thanks very much, everybody.
Thanks, Rob.